A while ago, I hit a point where I was watching more videos about games than actually playing them myself. Whether that was checking in to see where my old favourite title was now, or just seeing people talk about some of my all-time favourite games ever made. If I did decide to jump on a game, I would struggle to even get past the Xbox or PlayStation home screen. I would just sit there and stare at my Steam library, knowing I want to play a game, but nothing is calling to me. In some moments, I would have that little bit of motivation to jump on any particular game, such as Destiny, but I would find myself getting bored at the idea of just playing the game, so I would just close it once I was on the character menu, thinking about how I could have spent hours upon hours playing a game and now struggling to even get past the loading screens. All of this stems from this idea of feeling as if games just don't hit the same now as they used to. When we load into a new survival world, we walk around aimlessly, never making it past the first hour of gameplay, but when we were younger, we could play all night. All of us have games like this in our lives. The ones that we want to love as much as we did, but the enjoyment for them just isn't there, and new games just aren't hitting the same. So I wanted to explore this topic, discussing with you how we can actually start enjoying games again. One game that is the epitome of this issue and stands out clear as day to me is Destiny. The amount of times that I've loaded up this game to only close it at the character menu is beyond my own comprehension. I also know that it's not just me who has this issue, as I've spoken to friends describing the exact same thing and seen countless videos of people talking about the same subject. It's a really bittersweet moment. You have a little bit of light casting a massive shadow, making you think that you've become hyped for it, but the moment you get 2 minutes into waiting for the game to load and remember what you're in store for, you start experiencing that light getting snuffed out. For me, with a title like Destiny, this feeling comes from a place of feeling as if we were played over and over by Bungie. The gameplay was rarely changed, and when it was such small changes and additions that really weren't that worthwhile. Over time, it was something that I stopped buying into, and with that, I eventually stopped playing. It took me about 2 to 3 years to finally say enough is enough with that game, and the last 3 years of DLCs are ones that I've not even bothered to look into. This isn't a singular experience either. When I've tried to go back and play Black Ops 2 again, it just doesn't hit the same. And if anything, it just feels as if I'm purely playing it in the hopes to reconnect me to the past. It makes me feel nothing more than as if I'm trying too hard to enjoy something, like I was 11 once again. Not only that though, when I go and play a game like Minecraft, I'll create a world, have high hopes for what I want to do, but I have zero clue exactly where I want to start and what I want to be doing mid to late game. I'll start working on something and then get bored. Within maybe a maximum of 3 weeks, I'll then decide to close down the world. However, most of the time I struggle to even make it past the point of my first base. I'll spend all my time mining, and then get to the surface, richer than ever, but with nothing to do. And the last game that truly had this impact for me was GTA 5, more particularly GTA Roleplay, as I found myself coming to pure exhaustion. I was playing a game to such an extent that it was becoming boring because I was so accustomed to it. So much of the game relies on other players and the interactions from them to make it enjoyable that a lot of the time you're just waiting around waiting for the true elements of the gameplay to come through. And it would take so much out of me by the end of my experience with it that I had to step away and stop playing these types of games in particular. Not only was I struggling to get into certain titles and certain game franchises, I'd find myself watching YouTube very regularly but only watching content about games and then never playing them myself. During 2020 through to 2021, I found myself rarely playing many games, and mainly watching a load of content about them. The reason for this was just time availability. Time is such a big deal when it comes to everything we do in life, and if I have the option to just watch a 1 hour long video talking about a game that is 50 hours plus of gameplay, then honestly, I'll probably end up doing it, as it saves me a lot of time and it makes it a less daunting task to have to take on than, playing that 50-hour title. It's happened to me with many games, which means that I have a lot of knowledge about many games and even full franchises that I have no interest in actually playing for myself, and to be honest, I probably won't even end up playing. For us to understand this though, I want to talk about why exactly this is happening. So let's talk about the 3 main reasons that have affected me personally in many periods of my life, and hopefully they can resonate with you in some way and get an understanding in your own mind as to why this feeling occurs. The first reason that is the most outspoken in gaming is just that games just aren't hitting the same anymore. They're not being made in the same way in comparison to what they used to be. This is the easy scapegoat many of us will use when talking about how we don't enjoy gaming anymore. Whether that's how new games don't optimize their titles for the regular player, meaning tryhards' opinions are valued above all else, or how games are just simply not in a good spot when it comes to releases. This reason is one that I wanted to get out of the way, as I've said within that, as it's an easy scapegoat, which means that it's easy to target, but it doesn't really help us get anywhere. Are we correct in our belief that gaming is worse in terms of how it's being made today? Yes, maybe, in some areas we are, but it's not really solving the actual issue of why we're not enjoying games again. Is it solving the problem? Probably not. It's not solving the problem for us, so we have to dive a little deeper into understanding some reasoning. I'm saying this as well because I do dislike things like the corporate greed side of gaming, scummy microtransactions, the unfinished titles, and just the toxic communities built around many releases. However, knowing all of this is great and all, but it doesn't actually help us in any way to solve the problem that we're wanting to solve. Or at least it doesn't on a surface level. An idea from self-improvement that I've loved for a very long time is that we might not know what we want to do or who we want to be, but we have that anti-hero in our head, the version that we don't want to really become, and the version that we can avoid at all costs, ideally. It's those tropes that you don't want to take in from your parents, or those things that you see in other people that you don't want to take in as your own ways of being. And it means that you can effectively create this idea in your head of the stereotypical worst side of gaming, and what you can avoid instead. When understanding why we feel this way, we need to accept that things are the way that they are right now, and there's only a small amount of stuff that we can do as of right now to even change this or impact the way that the market is going. And to go back to that scapegoat point, the reason I want to say that this is a scapegoat is that a lot of the time we can use this to mask over the true reason we aren't enjoying games anymore, which has nothing to do with new releases, because if it was as simple as all of these new games were bad, then why are people enjoying many of the titles that release? Why aren't we just going back to old titles and loving the experience massively? You might want to say these people just don't have good tastes, and that's why they can't have an opinion on this topic, which I've spoken about elitism in gaming in prior videos, and that's kind of where I feel like a lot of people end up falling into this line of thinking, because the moment you kind of throw a counterpoint in there, they kind of just throw this idea of that you just have a bad taste in games. Which brings me to why I've been calling this a scapegoat, and one of the most impactful reasons for why we stop enjoying many things in our lives. Whether it's a other hobby that we enjoy, we might love reading a book, and then out of nowhere, we just don't enjoy reading it right now, we just don't enjoy reading as a whole. We might love doing rock climbing, or gaming for example, and you know what, we end up feeling as if we no longer enjoy it. And the main reason for this is our mental health. This is something that you rarely hear spoken about within the gaming community, as realistically, who wants to talk about it? We just want to jump on a game and then be happy with it. And because it's such a subjective thing that it can be very easy to just kind of go, nope, I have no issues, therefore this isn't the answer. It's also a subject that's very in and out of the gaming culture. The reason I believe that this is one of the bigger issues around this topic is that it's really easy to just say gaming isn't fun anymore, but actually asking why is really important. There's a concept called the 5 whys. As you might be able to tell, it means that you need to ask 5 whys. So if you believe something like gaming isn't enjoyable anymore, then ask yourself why. Well, it's because companies just make bad games nowadays. Because gaming is nothing more than woke now. Because capitalism sucks. Or maybe it's because my mental health just isn't in the right space right now, and therefore I'm just saying that the whole community and the whole area of gaming sucks right now, instead of cracking down on the real reason why it's happening, which has more to do with life itself than the actual culture within the gaming landscape. Now yes, that one sounds really specific, but that just gives you an idea into what I'm trying to say to you. You might genuinely think that gaming sucks now, but you still find enjoyment from some releases that come out from time to time, which is fine. However, for those who are just struggling to enjoy gaming as a whole, I wouldn't be surprised if this has more to do with your life outside of gaming than it does an actual, idea of gaming as a whole. I think that it has more to do with the outside world, and because that thing that we used to use as a comfort blanket just isn't cutting it anymore, it's easier just to say that gaming as a whole just isn't where it should be than it is to actually, dive deep into the reason behind it. The last part is linked to 2 concepts I briefly mentioned over the last couple of minutes. limits. One has to do with what comes with age, which is responsibilities, and the other is productivity. Getting older has obviously brought around plenty more responsibilities, or at least it has for me right now. I wouldn't be surprised once I've hit 40, I'm still going to have a load of responsibilities, but ideally, a lot of my life will kind of be in check enough that I can just enjoy things as I see fit and, find time to enjoy games enough. Right now though, it is just hard to find time for games and actually enjoy them in a way that isn't just making me think constantly about the right now responsibilities that I need to be taking on. I mentioned earlier about how I used to love watching content way more about games than actually playing them myself, which comes from this issue. When you don't have enough time to really sit down and enjoy a game, you're going to be subjected to two options in front of you, either watching content about games or playing games that, are time sinks, but way smaller entities of it. For the likes of COD, you may decide that you only have half an hour to play, so you're going to jump on and play 3 to 6 matches of Call of Duty. Or you can spend that half an hour watching a video essay like this about how, you just aren't enjoying games anymore. And the second one, being productivity, is a little bit of a hindrance when it comes to our enjoyment of playing plenty of games out there. I'm someone with an incredibly perfectionistic way of viewing my life, which has made me incredibly aware of the way that my brain is wired, so I end up questioning everything that my brain is doing just to make sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons. But when I'm playing a game, my mind always knows that I could be doing something else, but really, most of us wouldn't be doing anything else with that time, which wasn't just another thing that we're just completely wasting our time with. The meta productivity hack is realizing that you need downtime to truly be productive. So the next time that your brain may think to you, well, we could be doing something else right now, just remember that you do actually need downtime to fully prepare yourself and prepare your mind for the productive task that you need to be doing later on. These are the big whys. Gaming just isn't treated the right way by the companies that we used to love. Our mental health sucks, our lives just aren't where we want them to be. We're focusing on being as productive as possible and having as productive of a mindset as we can, and simply having way more responsibilities in our life. So let's actually talk about dealing with these issues head on in a way that I actually believe is most fitting in terms of solving the issue. So this will be in a particular order, and I'm going to mention at the end some actionable steps that you can take from the video, as I don't want this to be a video that you just kind of forget about, don't watch again. I want you to actually write down some stuff, write down on a piece of paper, okay, I need to do this, or I want to do this to try out and see if this works for me. I'm going to go through some of the things that have worked for me when it comes to enjoying games once again. The first step is one that you're already doing, most likely, or you might want to consider doing if you haven't done it just yet, which is to take a break. Stop playing some games for a few months. Disconnect from this world, do some other bits in your life just for the moment. That doesn't mean you can't check in on some of the areas that you like, watch some of your favorite content creators. However, one of the best things that you can do is just disconnect from this entire area just for a little bit. A lot of people's joy within something does come from the novelty of the thing itself. Many of us grew up playing games, and with that played so many for hours on end that over the course of our lives probably will make us question what we could have been doing with even 10% of that time if we had it available. Not saying that games are bad in themselves, I'm just stating this because obviously as a distraction mechanism, gaming is entirely designed to be that, and because of this, it means that it's very good at its job, and it means that it can distract us for longer than we may want to. When I took my first ever break from playing games, this was back in 2019. It lasted roughly 4 months. During this time, I was really depressed. I was struggling a lot with direction in my life, and I had just left college because the environment itself just sucked that I was being a part of, but also I found myself just enjoying other things in life outside of this. I won't get into those sorts of things on this channel. I might talk about it on my personal channel, so yeah, a little quick, shout out to that channel, go check it out, it'll be linked down below. During this time, I didn't really feel as if I had the desire to play a game or as if I needed to be playing games. The only reason why I got back into playing in the first place was because I wanted to jump onto a Minecraft world with a few of my friends. Besides that, I didn't really feel this desire to have to be online all the time and be gaming at every waking minute that I had available that wasn't dedicated to work. I went on to have a couple other breaks as well from playing games, one on purpose and the other coming from this constant feeling of whenever I would load up a game, I just didn't care about playing it. Games like Destiny come to mind, as I've already mentioned. The final break that I had then brought me back into playing games a lot more, but in a way more healthier manner than I was previously, and this was the version of myself in 2021. I hadn't really been playing much for the first half of the year, and at that time I also met my girlfriend, and I also knew that I wanted to be making videos as I had been for, on and off for like 11 years. This led to me playing The Last of Us because I really wanted to jump onto something that was story driven again, and afterwards I then played Skyrim again and Assassin's Creed 2, and those games allowed me to just enjoy the experience that I knew I loved, but also allow me to get into the hobby again without the toxic side of it coming out. Toxic games are pretty easy to find in your life. Many can categorize the mass majority of multiplayer games as these sorts of toxic games. For me, that definitely is true. However, generally, the best way of knowing if a game is toxic is based on these 3 criteria. The first is if you get angered or overly frustrated when you play a specific game. Games like CSGO or Souls, for me, are the ones that come to mind with this particular issue. The second is similar to when you meet up with that one friend or that person in your life who just drains every ounce of your existence from you, and you're just left wanting to do nothing more than just go home and sleep for a bit because you feel as if you've had everything taken away from you with like an hour of speaking to them. And the same is true when it comes to games. Destiny is the game that always did that for me. I never felt good about myself after playing, I just felt emotionally drained and like I was a husk of the person that I was just a few hours prior. Now yes, that might be a tad dramatic, but it's the best way of describing those feelings. The last one is quite similar to the second, but differs slightly. Instead of focusing on if a game is emotionally draining, we're going to focus on if you're lying to yourself about actually enjoying the game. Which means the final criteria is understanding whether or not the game that you are playing is actually one that brings you any form of joy or happiness, or if you're simply just addicted to the feeling that the game gives you sometimes. These are the games you might find as mostly really mediocre experiences, but like gambling, you can constantly keep pulling that lever until you eventually get a win. Battle Royales are a very good example of this that come to mind, or really any online FPS tactical shooter. Another way of judging this as well is if you think that you're playing a game that you actually enjoy, just ask yourself the question about how often you're smiling when you play the game. Destiny comes to mind for me. It's a game that for years I believed I enjoyed and loved, which probably stems from this place of truth, but the harsh reality of it is that it's more similar to a love for something than an actual enjoyment of something. Something you love is very similar to something you hate. It's just that one bad day can lead you to going towards that thing that you absolutely despise. When I realized that I was just sitting there looking at a screen for 6 hours on end, rarely cracking a smile, let alone laughing with my friends, I realized this game was one that I needed to step away from. This doesn't mean you have to drop every single multiplayer game that you're ever playing, or stop playing challenging games. What you need to do is figure out whether or not a game is providing value to you or your life, or if you're simply being played by the game, like TikTok or short form content or even YouTube videos like this. You'll forget about the next match the next day, but you know what? You feel as if you kind of need to keep playing. The next one is going to be really hard for many of us out there, but is essential for me personally, which is to stop consuming negative gaming content. The reason I'm saying it's hard is because it's everywhere. I upload negative videos from time to time, but you'll know what? I actually try to make some form of, valid arguments, and also I try to give a positive spin on what I'm talking about, but you'll know exactly the type of content creator that I'm on about when I explain it. Those content creators are, the people who are mainly posting content that seems a bit too much like pure rage bait most of the time, or they're just trying to keep you up to date about the new thing that you're meant to be annoyed about or enraged about. There are many creators out there, and I'm not prepared to go to war with all of the big ones in the space, but I think it's a crucial thing to do if you want to start enjoying games. Similar to how if you're already annoyed when you jump onto a game, you're probably going to end up more annoyed than you were previously, or at the very least, you're just not going to have a very fun experience because you're not in the right state of mind before playing. We need to start disconnecting ourselves from this content, and if you're still wanting to be in the know about something like this and just jump on from time to time to be up to date, just watch a weekly skill up video. He'll round up everything within a half an hour sitting to maybe an hour from time to time, but guess what? It's half an hour to an hour once a week. That is far better for you when it comes to dealing with content, especially considering he doesn't talk about how, oh, this specific thing is happening and this specific thing is happening. Oh, tomorrow I'll tell you all about how this company is awful and this it's like, just watch one video a week. week, it summarizes everything, and it's not absolute rage bait for views like there is within some in the industry. And another similarity that this has to other areas of life, for example, is if you already feel in a sad state of mind, or you know what, you're in a neutral, you don't have a particularly like over the top, you're excited, you're happy, and you're not that much of, you know, someone who's just down, you don't feel that bad. But then you start listening to music. Now, music plays a massive role in the way that we can feel. If you're consuming nothing more than negative music all the time, your mood will naturally lower because of it. It's something that I'm working on myself when it comes to that, when it comes to music, but it's also the same within gaming. If you're just always consuming negativity, all that's going to happen is make your day worse because you're allowing outside influences to take over the way that you feel on a day-to-day basis, because you know what, you decided you're going to sit and, you know, see someone talk shit about how Activision are awful for like 10 minutes, and then you're going to watch their next video where they talk about how Bungie's awful for the next 10 minutes. And guess what? Sometimes those things are granted, but a lot of the time, people are just rage baiting you over stuff that fundamentally you don't care about. You don't care about it, and they had to spend about 20 minutes explaining to you about why you should care about it. After we've gotten rid of the negative games and the toxic content creators, I would highly recommend just creating a shortlist of some games that you're interested in playing and the ones that you would like to play, but you've just never gotten around to it. And this shouldn't be an over-the-top list. I'm not one to create an Excel sheet that has my entire backlog of games that I need to play, as I personally just find it massively overwhelming, and I think it's an over-the-top way of seeing all the games that you might want to play, as you'll put anything and everything on that list. Create a list, maybe around 10 different games that you've wanted to play for quite a while now. You might already own them, like 90% of all the games that haven't been touched in people's Steam libraries, or it might be a game that you haven't gotten around to picking up just yet. For me, this would include the likes of Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, Breath of the Wild, Miles Morales, Spider-Man 2, Manor Lords, and a few more. These are a few games that I'm interested in playing and I haven't before, hence why I've started very recently playing Ghost of Tsushima. By creating a small list, it'll give you a far more achievable look to the games that you actually want to check out, the new releases or old games that you want to actually play for the first time. I believe creating a list of games that you find interesting is the best thing that you can do, as it will make you realize that you haven't actually opened your horizons up enough when it comes to the games that you want to play, and it allows you to realize that the conclusion that you've got, which is games aren't fun anymore, kind of isn't backed by the evidence that you've got right in front of you. The evidence in front of you might show a gaming market that you're not happy with, which is fine, and I completely get that. But what this does at the very least is make you question why you are actually believing that games just aren't fun anymore, and it might actually make you have to dive into those aspects that I mentioned earlier in the video. Another thing to take into account when you're trying to pursue enjoying games again is you need to remove this feeling of needing to do something or the need to jump on. I'm going to contradict myself in a moment, but you'll understand why. The reason I'm saying that you don't need to force yourself to play is because sometimes you just aren't in the right state of mind. You actually have other things that you need to be getting on with, or it's the case that you're just making playing a game far more work than actually something you're doing for leisure. The contradiction though does come from when you play those titles that you want to get into, but after a few hours you just seem to fall off and never touch again. And you end up repeating the same cycle where you may end up playing the introduction to a game multiple times. We need to learn how to strike the balance perfectly between not forcing ourselves to just jump on because of an amounting pressure internally of we need to play the game that we can't stop playing because otherwise we're going to get lost and not end up playing it at all. Because, you know, sometimes, like I said earlier, we have things in the real world that we have to do. But also knowing when we need to give ourselves that little bit of a nudge so that the game that we've just started playing, but we've taken a week off of playing, doesn't get lost in the dust and somewhere forgotten as an experience, and now you have to go back to the beginning the next time you decide to jump on. One side of need is bad, it creates this over-the-top doom feeling, whereas the other one just allows you to continue experiencing the thing you're playing. So many of us have this experience that we start to get into a game, you know what, you actually kind of really like it, and then boom, another big release comes out of nowhere around the corner that you just forgot about, or you knew was there but you just thought, you know what, I'll play this game and I'll continue afterwards, and then you just kind of get wrapped up in that new release, and you just stop playing the previous one. Sometimes we do have to force ourselves to enjoy something. It might sound contradictory, but it's something that we all know to be true at times, especially considering one of the biggest examples of this is something like working out. If you don't feel the need to go to the gym, one of the best things you can do is simply forcing yourself to go, but also another way of doing it that doesn't feel as much like you're forcing yourself is just to ask yourself the question of how will you in 5 hours feel? Or how will you tomorrow feel if you don't go to the gym or you do go to the gym today? Most likely, you will probably feel great about yourself if you haven't gone and done it. The same goes in many other areas of life. It's why, for as much as I do believe to a high extent that it's the game's responsibility to keep us entertained and interested in the game, I'm not against forcing myself to play through a specific point of a game if the title is beloved by others, as there's got to be a reason there that people love the games so much. A big example for this, and I've mentioned this in many videos before, was Red Dead 2. I forced myself through the first 10 hours of the game because I was like, so many people love this game. I don't like cowboy stuff. I also just thought the game was really slow to begin with. And guess what? I forced myself through 10 hours of it, I got to know the characters that were there, and I ended up falling in love with the game and finding it as one of the best gaming experiences that I've ever had. This goes for many other titles out there. Sometimes you do need to put pressure on yourself to play the game and just get through a certain point so that you take in and soak up the knowledge. But at other times, you do end up feeling as if you just need to jump on the game because you said to yourself that you would at least put an hour every single day into playing. Instead, allow yourself to just kind of do it in ebbs and flows, and if you notice that you're falling off a game, question to yourself, is this a game that you actually want to play, or do you want to replace it with a game that you're more interested with? Sometimes though, we don't actually need to force ourselves to jump on a game, and also we don't need to stop ourselves from forcing ourselves to jump on a game because we may feel guilt for not doing something. Sometimes we end up inspired to jump on a game and we end up really enjoying it. This isn't something that I ever really thought about until very recently. I found myself realizing that there's loads of games that I've played that have come based off of inspiration from other sources. As I've mentioned in a few different occasions now, Ghost of Tsushima is a game that I'm playing for the first time. Not really, as it's technically my third attempt of playing it. The first two were over a year ago or so now, roughly, as I was originally going to look at making a video about the game at that point of time, so I forced myself to play, and I just wasn't enjoying the experience at that point. I would only make it through the first couple of hours before then closing the game and just giving up on the process. However, a few weeks ago I watched Shogun, which made me really immersed into the world of feudal Japan. The one thing going through my mind when I made it about halfway through the show was that when I am home, I'm going to play Ghost of Tsushima, which I ended up doing. When I see a cool building or medieval styles of housing around the UK, it always makes me feel as if I want to load up a Minecraft world and see if I can build it for myself. When I watched through Game of Thrones on multiple occasions, which yes, that means that I am admitting to you right now here on the internet that I've watched Game of Thrones multiple times. I'm not going to state how many times because people will question me, but yeah, let's just say I've watched it at quite a few occasions over the last 6 years, so obviously sometimes that was watching seasons 1 to 5 over and over again until the season 6 came out and whatnot, just because I found the world incredibly immersive. But what it made me do is really want to jump on Skyrim or The Witcher 3. Even Assassin's Creed Valhalla, a game that I talk a lot about, and not in a positive manner by any means, ends up coming to mind as something that I actually want to jump on and want to give a second chance because of something like the Vinland Saga. What this means is that we don't necessarily always need to force ourselves to play a game. An actual better approach that I've found generally that brings way more joy to playing the games that I actually want to play and way more joy to the gaming hobby as a whole is finding outside resources to help ease me in. We should be aiming to get inspired to play a game. Inspiration will do wonders for wanting to play through something in comparison to pressure or motivation, which is a really weird word to use when talking about playing a game. I mentioned it earlier about playing Destiny. It feels weird to say as I don't really feel like you can be motivated to play a game. I guess you can at times, but it just kind of feels odd. I don't know if it's more just hype or motivation. Who knows if they're basically the same thing or if they're interchangeable in any way, who knows. All I know is that it just feels weird to say motivation. I do think though inspiration is genuinely there and can actually help you get into a game way more. If you have zero clue which game you're actually interested in jumping on right away, or maybe you do have a clue of some of the ones that you're interested in, instead of jumping on straight away, spend a little bit of that time on that break that I mentioned from gaming. Just go outside, see things, visit some countries, get immersed into other cultures, Watch shows that will immerse you into those new time settings or different worlds for you to explore. All of this will add to the idea of becoming inspired to play a game. The final way to really start enjoying a game again that I've hinted at throughout this video but haven't said directly to you is to start having a life. There's one big reason for this, which is that many of us who game only have this hobby as a hobby. We might have some smaller interests here and there, but they haven't really reached that status of actually being a hobby. We also don't really have a proper life. We just work, sleep, game, and then maybe make some time for a friend or family member every few weeks. This is why you're not enjoying games anymore. You've not allowed yourself to actually enjoy life itself, and you're only playing a very specific subset of games. The main thing that I would highly recommend that some will find sounds incredibly silly but does need to be said because some do need to hear this, which is to go outside. Touch grass is a saying in the gaming world because so many of us are not only chronically gamers, we're also chronically online, which means that we haven't spent enough time doing real life things. The less time you spend in the digital world, I guarantee your general life will get better. Obviously, that is a blanket statement. Some games are genuinely the best bits of entertainment and storytelling that have ever been made by people. Some creators genuinely make thoughtful content, but this isn't the content I'm talking about. I'm talking to the people who play competitive shooters, watch live streams for hours a day, watch YouTube drama content and rage bait. You need to strip this toxic side of the internet out of your life and replace it with far more positive real life experiences. Besides going outside, you need to build friendships and actually, dedicate time towards your family. Again, you might be someone who doesn't have the best family life, but for those who kind of have a decent family life, or you have some people who, you're still connected with, but others you're not, try and actually spend time with them. It will be far more of a worthwhile thing to do while you can than be playing games every single waking minute, especially in the gaming space where so many of our friends aren't really friends. Some are for sure, but others are much more just like gaming buddies. You don't do anything in real life with them, similar to how many don't actually have real proper friends, they just have drinking buddies. For adults, it's increasingly difficult to make friends, let alone make friends with people you actually want to be friends with. So start doing more, get into new hobbies, join some clubs, reach out to people on the likes of Instagram. Even if you don't meet up with them, you can jump on a Zoom call and just have a chat. I found myself actually making friends with people who I genuinely want to talk to and catch up with quite regularly just through that last thing alone. I would also highly recommend getting into some new hobbies, as like I said, for many this is their only one that they've got. So try out some things that you've found interesting in the past, no matter what it is. Try to get rid of that built-in stigma towards doing something and just try it out and see if you like it. Create a list, like the one I mentioned earlier of creating a list for games you're interested in to just some new hobbies that you might be interested in checking out. Reading is a great place to start for many out there if you want to do something that's just from home and doesn't take you too far out of your comfort zone. Getting into something like a sport as well that you might have done when you were younger, or just trying out some form of creative pursuit. Having more hobbies than just gaming will make gaming even more enjoyable, as you'll be able to go into it when you truly find something you enjoy instead of going into it because you feel as if you don't have much else to do. Having a life is probably the best ROI thing you can do to start enjoying games again, in my opinion. My goal with this video was to try and help you guys out and actually get you to enjoy games again, and however, I don't want you just to forget about this video and the next couple days you just stop caring about it and don't even think about this subject again. Grab a notebook for a second, ideally a physical one. If you need to, use something like Apple Notes or whatever, and here is a few actionable steps that might be worthwhile trying to do or pursuing. Obviously, malleable, try out whatever you want to do, see what works for you and what doesn't. The first is to take 60 days off of playing games if you haven't already. Get a gym membership and go twice a week at minimum. Create a list of 10 games that you're interested in checking out. Create a list of 5 to 10 hobbies you're interested in, and then actually make plans to go and try them out. Check out 2 to 3 new shows or movies that you haven't watched before, which again will hopefully get you inspired in some way to play a game in the future. Invite 2 to 3 friends on a walk or shared activity together. Start watching YouTube with more intention and getting rid of all the rage bait content you might be consuming. Lastly, uninstall all of the negative games from your PC and console. Those 8 things will allow you to start enjoying games again. Even if some of them don't feel as if they're related to gaming in any way, like the gym side of things, I promise you that if you start enjoying your life far more, you will become happier with yourself and with life itself, that every single aspect of your life, including gaming, will just get better. So please try out these things, Get back to me on how they go for you and the progress that you've made with yourself and, you know what, the games that you want to enjoy and check out. Also, let me know down below what's worked for you if I haven't mentioned it in this video. I'd love to know anything extra and what can be done to help others or help me in the future if I go through the exact same things again, where I need to kind of, take a step back and actually dial in my thoughts. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've also got a monthly game club that I host in the Discord, so make sure to come on by if you're interested. This month is Ghost of Tsushima, which works for me as I recently started playing it. As again, I've mentioned, I feel like I keep mentioning this. I'm sorry if I am reiterating myself a bit too often in these videos. Lastly, if you do want to support the channel, it would be greatly appreciated. Check out the Patreon down below. It's as low as, I believe, $1 a month, I believe. I would need to double check that. But yeah, the actual tier that gets you early access to things and just gets you a little bit of extra stuff is the Exiled ones, which is $5 a month, so make sure to check that out if you are interested. Any support is much appreciated, as this channel, yeah, it's the case that I would like to, enjoy doing more of it and be able to dedicate a bit more time and resources to making the content better for you. With that all being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.